Hello everyone. Most men have spent years complimenting women and still somehow missing the mark. It's not usually because they choose the wrong words. It's because they don't understand what a compliment actually does inside the mind of the person receiving it. Here's the part no one really explains. The average compliment most men default to doesn't spark attraction. In many cases, it quietly creates distance. The ironic part? The man delivering it often believes it went well. He thinks he was kind, thoughtful, maybe even charming. Meanwhile, she walks away feeling neutral at best or slightly uncomfortable, and he has no idea why. There is, however, a small group of men who figured something out, not through manipulation, not through memorized lines, but through a real understanding of how emotional experience works. The compliments they give feel different. They linger. They stay in a woman's thoughts for days. They're the kind she mentions to her friends later. What's interesting is that these men aren't always the most conventionally attractive or the most successful. What sets them apart is that they understand something fundamental about human psychology, something that changes the entire dynamic of connection. This isn't about pickup lines. It's not about tricks or tactics to make someone like you. That kind of advice is everywhere, and it usually misunderstands attraction at its core. What we're talking about here is rooted in real psychology, how emotional recognition works, how people internalize meaningful experiences, and why some interactions are unforgettable while others fade instantly. There's a powerful difference between a compliment that makes someone feel evaluated and one that makes them feel truly seen. Once you understand that distinction, you'll never approach this the same way again. By the end, you'll understand 8 specific types of compliments and, more importantly, the psychological mechanisms behind why they work. The final one, especially, has the potential to completely shift how you think about attraction. Let's start with something you've probably experienced. You meet a woman you're genuinely drawn to. Maybe it's her intelligence, her humor, or the way she carries herself. At some point, you want her to know you're interested. So you say, "You're really beautiful," or "You're so smart," or "I love your style." She smiles. She says thank you. And then, nothing changes. The energy doesn't shift. The connection doesn't deepen. The conversation simply continues as if the compliment never happened. Why? Because most of those statements are evaluative. Psychologically speaking, they function as judgments. You're essentially saying, "I assessed you, and you meet my standards," even if that's not your intention. The underlying dynamic places you in the role of judge and her in the role of being judged. That subtle power dynamic matters. There's another issue. Generic praise doesn't create impact. "You're beautiful" is something she has likely heard many times. It doesn't reveal anything unique about her. It doesn't reveal anything about you either. It's broad, interchangeable, and easy to say to almost anyone. The human brain naturally discounts information that isn't specific, novel, or emotionally meaningful. So the real gap isn't sincerity, it's depth. Before getting into the 8 types of compliments, you need to understand 3 core psychological principles that make them effective. First, validation versus recognition. Validation says, "You're good." Recognition says, "I noticed something specific about you." Validation activates the brain's reward circuitry. It feels good briefly, like social approval, but it fades quickly. Recognition activates something deeper, the sense of being understood. And being understood is one of the deepest human needs. Not just liked, not just admired, seen. When someone feels genuinely seen, that moment creates emotional weight. It stands out because most social interactions are surface level. We're constantly performing versions of ourselves. When someone cuts through that performance and notices something real, it leaves a mark. Second, emotional safety precedes attraction. Many men believe attraction is about excitement, spark, or intensity. And while novelty and confidence matter, attraction deepens through emotional safety. When someone feels safe, not managed, not pressured, not evaluated, their nervous system relaxes. When their guard drops, they become capable of feeling more. Compliments that are overly focused on appearance or that carry hidden expectations often reduce emotional safety, but compliments that communicate, "I'm interested in who you are," increase it. Safety opens people, pressure closes them. Third, celebration versus approval. Approval is conditional. It's a verdict. You did well, you look good. Celebration is different. Celebration says, "The fact that this exists in you genuinely delights me." Most people have been approved of. Very few have been deeply celebrated for something specific and real about who they are. When someone feels celebrated, not evaluated, the emotional impact is profound. It feels like a gift, not a transaction. With those principles in mind, the 8 types of compliments begin to make sense. The first is the specific observation. Instead of saying, "You're funny," you might say, "The way you paused before the punchline in that story you probably didn't even notice, but the timing was perfect." That level of detail signals presence. It says, "I'm actually paying attention." The second is naming the quality behind the quality. Instead of praising what's visible, you identify the character trait beneath it. Not just ambition but care. Not just confidence but integrity. It feels deeper because it is. The third is recognizing growth. Noticing how someone has evolved, shifted, or handled something differently honors their internal work, not just their traits. The fourth is the undefended truth. A precise observation so accurate it can't be brushed off as flattery. It feels grounded, not strategic. The fifth honors courage in real time. When someone is vulnerable, acknowledging that vulnerability calmly and sincerely creates immense emotional safety. The sixth highlights a rare trait they take for granted. You help them see that something ordinary to them is actually exceptional. The seventh is praise given when they're not present. Compliments shared with others carry more credibility because they're free from performance. And the eighth, the most powerful, is the compliment that costs you something. This is when acknowledging her quality requires you to reveal something true about yourself. You make it easy to be honest. You ask questions that challenge me. You change my mind in ways I didn't expect. Now you're not just observing her, you're allowing her to affect you. We are drawn to people who let us matter. Not dramatic vulnerability, not emotional overexposure, but selective, grounded openness. When someone composed and self-assured admits, "You moved me," it confirms authenticity on both sides. None of this requires scripts. In fact, scripts ruin it. What this requires is attention, real attention. Most people only give a fraction of their focus in conversation. They're thinking about what to say next, how they're being perceived, whether they're impressing the other person. That divided presence is why so many compliments feel hollow. The solution isn't better lines, it's better noticing. Slow down, listen without preparing your response. Let silence exist. Observe what is genuinely interesting about the person in front of you. When a compliment arises naturally from that level of awareness, it lands differently. And remember, this isn't about manufacturing attraction. If genuine connection isn't there, no compliment will create it, and it shouldn't. The goal is not to engineer emotion. The goal is to stop blocking real connection with generic interaction. Most compliments fail not because they're insincere, but because they move from the outside in. They begin with a standard: beauty, intelligence, success, and measure the person against it. What truly connects moves in the opposite direction. It starts with who she actually is in this moment. It begins with reality and then finds language to honor it. That's not a tactic, that's presence. When you become someone who pays attention at that level, not as strategy, but as a way of being, everything shifts. Not just your romantic connections, all of your relationships, because attention at its core is a form of care, and people always know the difference between being looked at and being truly seen.